Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that some stories and discussions in this episode of Radiant Resilience may touch on sensitive and potentially triggering topics. These may include themes of discussion of discrimination and gender bias, mentions of mental health struggles and anxiety, and brief references to homophobic comments and challenges faced by LGBTQ individuals. Our goal is to share real life experiences in a respectful and empathetic manner, offering insights into the complexities of the human spirit and the journey towards resilience. However, we understand that some content might be difficult for listeners. We encourage you to prioritize your well-being and discretion when deciding to listen. Please remember this podcast is not a substitute for professional advice or support. If you find yourself needing assistance, we urge you to seek help from qualified professionals or trusted support systems. Your mental and emotional health is important to us. Thank you for your courage and for joining us in a space of compassion and understanding. Welcome back, everybody, to Radiant Resilience. I have a very special guest on here today, Amber Benway, who is actually the daughter of Michelle Golden, who was on episode 7. If you haven't listened to that one, please go back and give that one a listen. Amber is an only child, currently going into her 3rd year of college at the University of South Dakota, pursuing a criminal justice degree and a minor in disaster response. Her career aspirations are to pursue law enforcement and become a police officer. And she's currently working in a corrections facility and has been there for a little over a year now to gain some experience, which actually we may want to touch on that a little bit more because that could be interesting too. I've never talked to anybody that worked at a corrections facility. But anyways, welcome, Amber. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. We thought we'd just give an overview of Amber's life. So why don't you go ahead and give us a brief overview of your childhood and things like that?
Okay. You mentioned I grew up an only child. It was just me and my mom and my dad, which I'm very thankful for. We are very close. Literally everything that I would do growing up would usually be with them. We would just go on a bunch of little adventures as a kid. There's the Ledges State Park. I always remember going there and just little trips to thrift stores and stuff because we just found like enjoyment in little things. I grew up in Ames, so I was born and raised there for a while, I think by 7 or 8 years, I think. And
And your
then
mom had you pretty young, right?
yeah, she had me at 21, I believe. And I was a preemie, so I was born super, super, I think it was like 2 weeks early, I want to
Okay.
say. But, and then I know that I had a slight complications with like my lungs not being fully developed because I was a premature baby. But I'm here now, so obviously
Hey.
everything went fine. So yeah. And then about 6 years ago, I think, we moved to Perry and we got our first house. So we lived in apartments on and off and just lived life through that. And then I transferred to Perry for middle school into high school. And that was a good change for, I think, a lot of us for the most part, because I do better in smaller communities. So I was able to kind of branch out and be my own person and just live my life the way I wanted it to be. Grew up, went through high school, and then graduated in 2022. So that was pretty cool. However, I had a slight obstacle with that where I caught COVID 5 days before my graduation and
Oh
I had to miss my actual
no.
ceremony.
Oh,
But my school district was very generous and very kind and was able to still provide me my graduation ceremony with the entire district of Perry to be at my graduation. I
oh.
was basically in the gym, which is pretty huge, with a single chair in the middle of the gym and then the stage. So it was a little like, oh my gosh, I'm the center of attention and I don't like this. But
How big
it
was
was really,
your class at that school?
I think my graduating class was a little over 150, so it wasn't super big, but like for Perry, like I think we have a little less now, like 1,000 people.
Oh, wow.
So our high school and middle school are combined. So it was probably a little over 1,000 kids in one building. So
But
it
of
seems like a lot at the time.
150 people in 2022, I'm surprised you were the only one that got COVID right before
Right.
graduation.
Yeah, I know. I'm pretty sure I caught it from my job at that time because I was starting to feel just not great after working. And I was technically supposed to work on my graduation day anyway, but I was like, yo, I'm graduating. I can't work. And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, bye. So yeah, I don't know. It was what it was. It was not fun. I thought I was dying for 48 hours, but
Jeez.
and then after the 10-day quarantine, I was able to still have my grad party, which is really great. So I was very thankful that I was able to recover quickly. So
Yeah.
yeah. But so yeah, then I graduated, enjoyed time with family for a bit, and then moved off to Vermilion. And now I have my first apartment. So I'm pretty excited about that. I have two roommates, but they're really chill. I actually work with one of them at the jail. We get along really well. And then his girlfriend actually works at the Yankton County Jail, which is 30 minutes away from Vermilion. So we all understand how the process of corrections goes, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool to have those people around you that you can connect with and commiserate with when you come home and stuff like that, to
Mhm.
have that
Oh, yeah.
connection. Because
It's great.
I bet that's an interesting job to have. I have a friend who, this is a different career, but is a nurse at a mental health facility here in
Mm,
Colorado. And I'm always
mm.
like, every time we get together, he's been doing it for 20 years now. And I'm like, tell me all the stories.
Oh, yeah.
But he says
There's a lot.
mostly people just run around naked. That's most of
Mm. We get
it.
that too. Don't worry. I understand how that goes, unfortunately.
Oh,
But
that's
yeah,
so
we
funny.
actually, in our facility, we also have a mental health side of it, corrections too, which some of us are like iffy on the subject because we do not really agree that people who need mental health resources should be put in a jail cell for
Mm.
help.
Ah,
But yeah, that's a whole other conversation.
I
But
mean, that's, yeah, it would be super
yeah,
interesting though, because it's true.
yeah.
I've been reading, I don't know if you've read the book, The Body Keeps the Score. But I've been
Mhm.
reading that, and it's very sciencey by this guy who is a psychiatrist and everything. But he talks a lot about our mental health methods from back in the day because he's been doing it for a really long time, and just the mental health facilities and what they were like and things like that. And now I don't think we have it. I don't think it's much better, but I don't know what to do because somebody also has to pay for all of that.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
Oh,
It's not it definitely needs some work, but yeah. I know we've had quite a few people come in. So we have a process called putting someone in protective custody. I guess we're just gonna go into this part.
sure.
So
We'll
so
backtrack here in a little bit.
when someone goes into protective custody, they basically get an authorization through a mental health like attorney, I believe is the term. And then when it gets authorized, so usually they have to come in contact with law enforcement, whether it's someone's calling in on a welfare check, which is pretty common, or they come into contact with law enforcement in a different way and they are showing signs of maybe needing a mental health hold. So once that gets processed, then they will bring them to our jail because unless they need to be medically cleared, which you'd think would just they would just keep them. So we have a Vera behavioral health in Sioux Falls, but then we have a Sanford clinic, which they work together, but they're like different at the same time. So you would think that they would just bring them to the hospital, which is Sanford, but unless they like actually need medical clearance, like if they have an injury or something, they don't normally take them there right away. So they bring them to us, and then we go through their protective custody process where it's slightly similar to a book-in process, but we don't take a mug shot. We don't do anything that would obviously put their information out to the public because if you get booked into jail, if you look at their county roster or whatever, you can see their name, what their charges were, how old they are, everything.
Yeah, that's
Um,
public information, right?
yep.
Mm.
So we don't obviously don't want this person who is even though they're in our facility, we don't want them to have to worry about their name being here because they're obviously needing help So it's a slightly different process, and then we have to evaluate them in a different way. Where it's if they are showing signs of suicidal ideation or anything like that, that also maneuvers which part of our facility they're going to be in. So we have holding cells, which are they're a little nicer than our mental health cell, which is basically just a blue cement uh, square like room. There it's just all cement. There's obviously like a toilet and a sink in there, but everything else is just basically taken away from them. If they are showing signs of suicidal thoughts or anything like that, we have to change them out into a suicide smock, and go through that. They get a mat, and a blanket that is basically suicide proof, so they can't like suffocate themselves, and all this stuff. And it's a process for us that can be really like hit or miss, because most of my coworkers, including myself, don't to have to put them in that situation, because they're like, this is not what I was expecting. They call the suicide hotline or something, and they are immediately taken to jail when all they were wanting was help. And
Mm.
we, as like correctional officers, we have to obviously understand that they're not expecting to be here, and we don't necessarily feel like they should be here, but by the mercy of the county or the state or something, this is our job or part of our job. And so we have to explain to them and be like, I understand. I really like don't want you to feel like we want you here, because
Yeah.
we want you to get help just as much as you needed it. But this is the process. And because we do get a qualified mental health professional to come in and talk to them and kind of evaluate them there. Um, but sometimes that can take up a good amount of time just for them to come to our facility. And so they're just playing a waiting game of how long they're going to be there, because usually the mental hold is between 24 and 48 hours until the qualified mental health professional can either release them like on their own will or transfer them to another facility that actually deals with mental health.
So this is all somebody calls in like a welfare check on somebody and they're suicidal, they get brought to the correction facility? Is that
Yes.
just like a South Dakota thing? Is that like a state
I
by state thing
I
or?
really don't know. Have been wanting to do a lot more research on it, because it seems right now it's just like a state thing, like a South Dakota
Okay.
thing, but it's so weird. And I don't even know if every county does it that way, because I don't know if, because the surrounding counties, we have Union County, which is like where Elk Point is, which is close to Dakota Dunes and stuff. I don't know if they really do that. If Yankton does it, Minnehaha, which is like Sioux Falls area, they have a very behavioral health, so you would think that they would just go straight there. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, Yankton County has HSC, which is a other type of mental health, like hospitals facility. So I don't know if it's just because we don't have the resources, other than
Yeah.
having to drive an hour or 30 minutes, depending on which way they have to go. Because that's another thing. Us jailers or like correctional officers, we are required to transport those people if they get approved to go to a Vera or HSC or
Mm.
another facility for mental health.
So they bring them to you first, and then you have to do all your processes and then move them to a mental health facility?
Yep.
That's so interesting.
It's very backwards.
Especially because for a welfare check, like these people aren't
Mhm.
doing anything wrong. They're just
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
being checked on because nobody's
Yep.
heard from them for a while. So
Yep. Yeah. It's a weird situation to manage.
fascinating.
Yeah. It's It can be a lot. There has been a couple times where, like, I've stayed late. I got called in one night, and I was supposed to do it. So sometimes we have to sit on inmates. So sometimes they're actual inmates of our facility, but sometimes they're mental health. So I had to sit on someone who was on a mental health hold, but also had charges for us. So that's also a
Oh.
weird fine line.
If they're breaking the law and they did something wrong and they have the mental health aspect, like that makes sense to me to bring them depending on what
Right.
exactly they did wrong. But if you're
Yeah.
just somebody that nobody's heard from for a while, and
Mhm.
then they bring you to
Yeah.
the jail. That's
Mhm.
terrifying.
Yeah, we had someone call the suicide hotline number, and he was a little bit, like, up in age, and he was just going through it, and next thing he's being brought to jail, and obviously they're extremely upset and agitated, so they're coming at us, and he was like, "Why am I being put in a jail cell when all I asked for was help?" Like, all this stuff, and
Yeah.
he's even was upset at the officers who brought him in because it's still the same almost looks like the same process of getting arrested. So they're putting you in handcuffs to prevent you from hurting yourself or harming others, and it doesn't sit well, and it's just
No,
awful.
no, because people are already having mental health issues, and then to get to the point of asking for or needing help, and then that's the experience. I feel like that would be slightly more traumatizing because they don't know what's going on or why that's happening or,
Mhm. Yep.
oh man, that's got to be tough to deal with.
Yeah, it can be a lot, and but I always feel very thankful when they are able to get transferred to another facility, whether I'm taking them or someone
Yeah.
else, as long as they get approved, because then I know at least they're actually getting the help that they originally should have gotten.
And by approved, by who? Are
The
we
qualified health
insurance
mental
or?
by the qualified mental health professional, so they have
Okay.
to do an evaluation with
Okay.
them and just see what they need to be worked with on, whether it's like they need some medication prescribed, but that's obviously a later step, or they just need to talk to a psychiatrist. It's a whole like process that I'm still learning about, but they have to go through the evaluation, which can take a couple hours, and then the mental health professional decides, okay, you're going to be transferred to a Vera, which is also a very big facility, so, a lot of the time, their beds can get pretty full,
Mm.
so that's another reason of approval is if they have the space for them.
So if they're not approved, do they go home or do you put them in a cell?
So they will stay in a cell until they either get approved or
Okay.
for any facility. So maybe Avera doesn't work, but maybe they try Yankton County or another surrounding county that has a facility. And then if they just aren't able, we've never had a case that has happened where they aren't able to find a place for them. But then after, it's either after 24 hours, I think it's 24 hours. After 24 hours, they are released on
Okay.
their own. And then I guess just go from there, which even then it's, "Oh, so you just held me for 24 hours and you didn't do
Yeah.
anything for me?" That's nice. But
Yeah. Oh, geez. Well,
yeah.
that was not where we were intending this conversation to go, but that's
No,
super
but
fascinating.
yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to back up a little bit and let's go back to little Amber at 14 or 15 years old. And why don't you share that story with us?
We moved to Perry around that age. I think I was going into 8th grade at the time, and that was a big changing part of my life just because I had come out to my parents as a lesbian. And I was very thankful during that time that they were super, super supportive, which not very many people are lucky to have.
Were you
And
ever concerned that they wouldn't be, or because you were really close with
slightly,
them? So,
I still was, and I was just super, super nervous at the time because kind of social media and just media in general kind of brings out that anxiety ridden stuff where it's, oh, what if they don't accept me? Because there are a lot of people that don't have that privilege of having parents who are supportive or accept them for their love interests and stuff like that. And I've had multiple friends that only one side of their family supports them or none of them do, and they
mhm,
just have to tough through it and find a support group through friends, through school, and all of
mhm.
that. So I was a little nervous, but it ended up obviously working out really well. And I
And at
was,
14 and 15, 14, 15, that's pretty young to,
oh yeah, I was
have
a
that
child.
conversation. Yeah, but also you knew who you were, and that I applaud that as well. And you were brave enough to come out to your parents too, because some people, even still, even though it's way more accepted than it used to be, people still hold on to that into their adult years, and it
Yeah.
can be very traumatizing and damaging.
Oh yeah. There were a lot of conversations with my parents, both my mom and my dad, where it was like they would tell me about when they were growing up, what it was like because no one ever talked about it. It was a very like taboo subject. And I always kept in the back of my mind, my parents have drilled this into my head since I was a kid that they always wanted me to have the life that either they never were able to have or their parents weren't able to give them because they grew up not in the greatest lifestyle, but so they just wanted the best for me. And obviously, they're very, like, protective of me because I'm their only child,
Yeah.
so I am almost their everything.
Yeah.
So I they just didn't want me to get hurt and have to deal with any hardships, but obviously that's a part of life. So they just were very protective, but they were able to inform me on a lot of things, and it helped me maneuver through it where not everyone's gonna be accepting, and they're gonna say some really stupid, mean things, and you're not gonna like it, but you're gonna have to grow some thick skin and kinda tough love a little bit, but I obviously am very grateful that they were able to provide me that because I'm 20 years old now and I can live on my own and provide for myself and not have to worry about being like naive or anything like that anymore.
Yeah, and that's really great that they did that for you. And I think that from what I've heard from a lot of these stories, that for parents, that's a lot of the times the scariest thing is they're not upset with their kid, right? They're just
Mhm.
upset or worried about them living in the world we're living in, being different and the way
Mhm.
that we treat people, and it's
Yeah.
not okay. But I am happy to say I feel like there are changes coming. Things are
Yes.
changing in a better light for sure,
Mhm.
but it's always a long process for that. But I'm glad that they loved and supported you. How was the extended family? Did you talk to them very much?
So that's been iffy for most of my life. I don't really have many relationships with most extended family. Most of them either just aren't very healthy relationships, and since I
In
was a
general?
kid, yes,
Yeah.
there is a couple, like, on my dad's side, so I have an aunt and a couple cousins that I do still talk to, and we got pretty close during I think it was around COVID, actually. So when I was in high school, we got pretty close, and because it was also during a time where my other aunt on my dad's side had passed away. So that was a timeline where we grew a little closer with my dad's side. My mom's side is a little less able to get close to. I've only interacted with them a few times, most of them at really big gatherings like a wedding. And usually it's just because my mom is working the weddings. Other than that, it's very hit or miss. They might send me a happy birthday on Facebook, or I might do vice versa if I think I'm close enough with them. But other than that, they're not super in my life. I've had a couple instances where they've tried to push into my life,
Mm.
and my parents are not accepting of that. They're like, you cannot tell our daughter what to do. That's her life, and she will live it how she wants. It's gotten to the point where there was a period of time where they would asked me why I chose the career that I did. Because, fun fact, I don't know if you know this, but I was originally, you might actually know this. I was originally a music major
I
when
did
I
know
first got to
that.
University of
Yeah.
South Dakota. And the big 180 change to criminal justice this past year, a lot of people had either opinions on it or just were not really understanding of why. And it riled up my parents just a little bit where they were like, "Hey, this is not any of your concern, and this is her life." She's almost at the time, I was almost 20. I'm an adult. I'm out on my own. I'm in college. This is my life. You should not have a say in what I do or don't do. I still get it at work. I've had people come in being arrested and being incarcerated. They're like, you're like, oh, you are going to be one of those kind of cops where it's like, where nowadays it's, oh, all cops are bad or all that stuff, or I'm a racist, all that's kind of nonsense. And, or it's, are you sure you're going to want to do that? Aren't you scared of it? Like, how can you even shoot a gun or something? Like, that's a whole conversation. And I was like, why don't you worry about not getting arrested while you're drunk and being put
Right?
on PBTs? But just saying.
It's just
So,
so fascinating to me that why does everybody nowadays wanna tell everybody what they can and can't do in any
mhm,
aspect of life?
yeah.
I don't know. I've for most of my life, I've always just been like, you do you, I'll do me. And as long as you're not causing harm to people or
Mhm.
yourself, then whatever. It just amazes me the amount of opinions that people have and feel like they need to share to in a way that's negative and judgmental
Yeah.
and rude.
Yeah, it's happened so
So
many times. Even so, a lot of my classmates and friends from high school, they knew I was going into music. That was my whole thing. I was really excited about it. Don't get me wrong, music is still a part of my life and always will be. But when I found that law enforcement was like my niche, I originally started working at the University Police Department here in Vermilion, which is just campus police basically, but they still do police work. They help our Vermilion Police Department. They're certified officers, so they just do different work. Um, and I was a security officer at the time, so I would like lock buildings, write parking tickets, all that stuff. And I just, in that time of my life, I was just trying to use the job for work study, but I actually found what I really wanted to do because helping people on possibly one of their worst days of their lives, that is my thing. I love helping people. I've always been that way. That's why I thought I wanted to like teach music because I had very memorable teachers in music throughout my life that were able to help me and grow as a person. But it's just you figure it out like it's a spectrum, it's a process, and as long as I'm happy, that's all I care about. So whether people from my high school, when they found out I changed and they were like, "Oh, so you're gonna be like basically, excuse my language, a piece of shit because I wanna help people in law
And
enforcement." But
so this is because you decided to go the law enforcement route.
yep. Mhm.
I mean, somebody's got to do it too. Like,
Exactly. Okay, so when you're gonna call 911 because, you're
mhm.
maybe in a domestic or maybe you have a medical call, because police officers go to medical calls. They're actually one of the first ones there because the process of an ambulance getting paged out takes a minute. So you're going to need someone to be there. And we are certified to be able to provide life saving measures like CPR and Narcan and everything like that. Maybe think about that before you tear a person down like that for wanting to help people.
And that's really,
But
really tough because unfortunately, that's become the view of the police force. And
Mhm.
I do think that there are some bad cops out there, 100%. Just like
I
in any
agree.
group, there's bad
Yeah.
seeds in any
Yep.
group of people. But I believe for the most part, people want to help people. Yeah. So that was your why, was because you wanted to help people
Mhm.
because you started the campus job?
Mhm. Yeah, that was my kind of aha moment. I've always been fascinated with law enforcement, I think since I was like 16-ish, and I did consider it like my sophomore year of high school, but again, people were telling me that I couldn't do it. Not my parents, but people like in around the school, whether I had a couple teachers actually tell me that I shouldn't because they didn't think I could.
They say that.
Because I'm a woman. Fun fact, because I'm a woman,
Oh,
because I'm small, I'm not muscular. I go to the gym and I work out and I do everything I can, but my freaking body size does not really matter if I can do the job or not. I
well,
mean,
also there's a lot of different areas. It's not like you're going to be constantly like chasing down and wrestling a big guy. Like,
yeah. And if I
you
am,
know?
there's going to be certain things that I'm going to be allowed to do because of my body size, I have a disadvantage, but one, I'm more than likely not going to be alone.
Yeah.
So I'm probably going to have my partners and other backup and stuff. And two, I have other tools that are at my advantage. Obviously, I would not misuse them because that's not what they're for, but they get used quite often. You mean you take what you can give. Just because I'm a woman and you think I can't do the job just makes me want to do it even more. And I'm going to literally just tell you to, again, excuse my language, but fuck off.
Yeah, for sure. It's just such an interesting conversation. I can't believe that we still live in a day and age that does that. There are so many female officers out
Yeah,
there nowadays. Like,
exactly.
why are we still having that thought process that a woman cannot be equal to a man?
Exactly. Sometimes I'm pretty sure, depending on like the department and how they're trained, some of them are a little even better than a male police officer. I've actually done my own research on this, especially working in corrections. Most women are very emotionally based in their like
Mhm.
psychologically, and men are very like analytical and logical. So we are able to build rapport with people, which I just learned about in my psychological first aid class last year. And I'm actually and not in a selfish or braggy way, but I've grown to do that in corrections and I'm pretty damn good at it. because most people, I've gone hands-on with a couple people in the jail, but most of the time I'm able to talk them out of it and de-escalate, which is a very big thing in law enforcement and any first responding career. I may not be strong, muscular man, but I can talk to people, and that's a big characteristic of law enforcement. And most of the time, when you're good at that, when you have those skills and can use them, you can talk people into handcuffs more than fight them into handcuffs.
Yeah, for
So,
sure. Ugh.
just my 2 cents, but whatever. I'm just a girl, right?
Oh my gosh, I cannot believe that. I don't know, because it wasn't that long ago that you were in high school. It's not like I'm coming up on my 20-year high school reunion. Maybe you would expect that from that
Right.
generation, but that just is
Yeah.
crazy. But I'm proud of you for forward and doing it anyways. But this is super fun conversation. I don't know.
Yes.
Oh, so what do you think you want to do? Are you going to stay at the corrections facility or what do you want
So
to do after college? Like what's
So I'm actually coming up on my 21st birthday in about
Yay.
less than 6 months. So the state of South Dakota requires you to be 21 to be a sworn police officer. So my goal right now is, fingers crossed, that I will be going back to the University Police Department where I started and be a police officer there. It's a very tight knit, like, office situation. I know everyone there. I'm very good friends with them, even outside of work, and I haven't worked there in 2 years. But I really enjoy what they do there. They're very focused on community-based policing, which is a big, like, thing for me. I love when police departments involve the community and work in basically cohorts with people of their home and everything like that. So that's my goal. I also really think I would do pretty well with it for at least a first time, like, full-time job. I hopefully it would be long term, but I don't know where life is going to take me after 5, 6 years or so. So maybe I might find a better opportunity. But I really enjoy the fact that they do everything that a police officer does. They get trained, they get sent to academy for 3 months. So I would be doing that. And then they respond to medical calls on campus. They respond to suspicious activity. They respond to sexual assault cases, getting to investigate that kind of stuff too and prevent that. And they do just everything that a cop would do, but a little bit more focused in the student community, the student body, which I really like, because I would be 21 at the time and still pretty young. And some people already know me on campus. So they would hopefully see my face and hopefully think good things and
Yeah.
feel comfortable to talk to me about anything that might be happening or maybe something they saw, and hopefully report those to us. And I can be there for people when they need the help the most.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds great. No desire to stay in the corrections facility then.
No, I don't get me wrong. I love having to gain the experience that I have in the
Yeah.
past little over a year. Because trust me, when I first started, I was very timid. I was still very, like, shy, Amber, and I didn't know how to, like, be assertive and stuff to a certain extent. But as I've grown since then, I can handle my own. I can provide that sense of authority to other people when need be, but I can also talk to people on a more personal base by base level and get them to understand where my side is coming from, doing my job, and but also getting them to a point where maybe they won't be in my facility 3 times a week or whatever, and maybe getting them a little bit more help so they can get back on their feet and things. Because I see a lot of people in and day out, like, at least 2 or 3 times a week, and they're always like, "Hey, Amber," and I'm like, "Hello."
Oh, wow.
I've definitely learned a lot about myself and other people, and I think it helped me grow my skills that I already knew that I had, but I was scared to use them.
Mm,
So it's definitely been a great learning experience, but I definitely want to put it out in the real world and more in the field that I planned on pursuing.
yeah, I'm glad you got that experience.
Yes.
I think it's super interesting. And then just to learn how the law works too.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think we all think that we know how it works and it seems
Mhm.
so straightforward, but it's actually not at all.
It's very, like, gray area sometimes.
Mm.
And there's just so many things about it. The amount of statutes I've learned in the past year, granted, we get some of them more than others, like a DUI, a simple assault domestic, a simple assault. In South Dakota, having a fake ID is a felony. So, fun fact,
Oh,
don't
wow.
do that. So, we've gotten a lot of that. Learning just what's a felony, what's a misdemeanor one charge, what's a misdemeanor two, things like that, what that entails, what that means for someone who's getting incarcerated. So, if you have a DUI, if it's a first offense of a DUI in the state of South Dakota, if you are a resident of South Dakota and you have a South Dakota license, your bond or bail, which is a little different, your bond to get out is unsecured, which to people who don't know what that means, it means you do not owe any money to us right away. And you are able to get out on your own will, as either if you're sober. So if you sober up in 12 hours or whatever, you can go home. Or if you have a sober ride, and we will have to breathalyze them and make sure they are sober. And then we have them basically sign for liability saying, hey, I'm going to take liability of this person. I am sober. I'm driving them home wherever, no
Yeah.
longer in our facility. And then you guys go home.
Yeah.
But the unsecured part means if you do not show up to your assigned court date, which is a failure to appear, you will get a warrant out for your arrest of that. For us, it's $500. Unsecured, you do not owe $500 if you live in the state of South Dakota. But if you don't, it's 500 cash or surety, which means cash, you pay cash or you pay like a percentage of that, which you would have to go through a bail bonds person. And it's just a different
Mm,
process.
yeah.
So don't get a fake and don't break the law because it's process.
I feel like that should be pretty self-explanatory, but it's not for everyone. Oh man, for such a young human, you have lived a lot in this lifetime and you're just
Yes.
so mature and I admire you. I think
Thank
your
you.
parents raised you right.
I like to think so too.
Yeah, they did good. Yeah, so you're just living the summer, working, and then you'll turn 21 and go that route. And
Yes.
yeah,
See where it goes.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing too, I was just thinking about this a little bit ago when we were talking about like the me coming out to my
Mhm.
parents, correlating the two together where I'm a lesbian, but I also want to be in law enforcement. A lot of people think that can't correlate, that can't happen. And
Why?
it sure can. I had someone once from when I graduated in my graduating class reach out to me because they had some opinions on me switching my career. And they were like, basically, since certain incidents happened at, well, what was it? Was it in California with the raid of a gay bar? And some of the victims had unfortunately passed away from that. And obviously, it was from that department who was like raiding it and like shooting individuals and things. They were basically they used that as an example where it was like, oh, you guys just victimize people of LGBTQ and you profile them just as maybe any person of a different color, a different race from you, just on the profiling base where it's, oh, you are basically unfair to people of the LGBTQ community and you will basically hurt them in any way possible because you don't like them. Because apparently, as a gay person, I would do that as a police officer because I'm
To
unworthy of that.
people who are not LGBTQ? Or
No, to who are.
why would that make any sense?
Exactly. Thanks. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. It was so interesting because she ended up sending me an article about how the tragedies of LGBTQ with law involved in law enforcement, and we don't like law enforcement and that they're just really like violent to us and all this stuff, and this is why LGBTQ people are dying and like all this stuff. And it was like a very weird, like very one-sided article
Sure.
where it was just I was like, this does not make any sense. I've even had someone I was on my floor of my freshman year dorm who ended up like swiping up on one of my stories on Snapchat, and because it was something about law enforcement. I worked for the university at the time, and she was like, "Aren't you a lesbian?" I was like, "Yeah, why?" And "And you are in law enforcement?" I was like, where's the comparison? Where's the line that you're trying to cross? Because it doesn't make sense. I don't know what you're trying to ask me." because
Yeah.
they don't correlate that way at all. And I'm like, what?
Doesn't make any sense. So
So
you're getting it from both sides because you're a lesbian and because you're a woman.
yeah, exactly. I'm like, where can I win in this situation? It's okay, you don't that I'm a lesbian or something, but I'm also a woman. But then I can't go do a career that I really want to do, which is law enforcement, because I'm both.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
What? Leave me alone. Mind your biz. Go worry about you.
I feel like I don't know the exact conversation you and your parents had when you came out and stuff, but you touched on it a little bit. And it sounds like that whatever they did prepped you for a future of having to deal with those similar conversations and even in different contexts, right? Being a
Sorry.
female and being a lesbian, you're having to deal with it on both sides, which is just crazy. I'm
Yeah.
so sorry.
Yeah. It happens. It's really unfortunate because it shouldn't be the way it is in this day and age, but here we are. But man, there was so many like late night conversations with my dad or my mom sometimes if she would able to stay up that late because I know she likes her sleep. But just so many conversations of okay, I was a very naive as person as a younger person. I just didn't understand how the real world actually was, and which was a struggle for me because I was like, why can't it just be this way? Like, why can't
Right.
people just be accepting? Why can't people just mind their fucking business? But that's just not how it works. People have opinions, people have their own ways that they got raised. It did really help me prepare for whether I've heard homophobic comments before, whether I've heard very just aggressive comments about me being in law enforcement or being a woman or just interesting interactions I've had with men, which don't get me wrong, I don't have any issues with men. Like, I'm not one of those people that's, oh my God, like, I hate men or whatever. That's not how that works. Cause I have a very close relationship with my dad and he is just amazing. Both my parents are great and I wouldn't change them for the world. And obviously, I didn't get raised to just hate people. That's just not how that works.
Right.
So people were like, "Oh, men are just like awful." And but I've had times when I was younger, my dad had pointed out later to me in life that like I had people, whether man or women, but mostly men, like when I was younger, like looking at me like sketchy, like they wanted to do some stuff that no, just no, it's not appropriate. And
When I was
even
younger, I remember the like construction workers that would like hoop and holler at you as you walked
yeah,
by. And yeah,
yeah, and
yeah.
it's sometimes it's not even that anymore. It's literally just they'll stare at you. They will look at
They
you.
hoop and holler like they used to.
Oh
That's
yeah.
not acceptable anymore. So
No, definitely not.
at least
They
it's not
found
that.
another way, yeah, and it's even now, if I ever told someone, like, that I am a lesbian, sometimes it makes them push even more, that they're like, "Oh, I like that." Like, "I can turn you," or
Oh.
"You
Oh.
are you haven't tried this before, you should experiment." And I'm like, "Shut the fuck up. Leave me alone."
Wow.
So, like, my parents prepared me for that, which was really weird to think about at, like, 16 when I was, like, getting into the dating stage a little bit and stuff, but I was like, "Damn, what is wrong with people?"
Mm. Yeah,
But
that's crazy. I'm glad that they had those conversations with you because it sounds like it's gonna serve you potentially the rest of your life.
oh, yes, very much. Even just being a woman too. Sometimes in law enforcement, like, I have a coworker at my job at the moment that thinks women cannot be in law enforcement. He thinks that women can't do the job that a man can, which fine, that's your prerogative, whatever. But I'm not gonna talk to you about that, and I'm not gonna, like,
Does he treat you
argue about it.
differently? Or does he
Sometimes,
treat any of the other
he's
women differently?
he treats a lot of us weird. He's actually our corporal. So he's up there, but he's very old school. And there's been a couple times where he's yelled at me for something that like was very unnecessary. And my admin was like, yo, that was like condescending. You shouldn't say that. And then he was like, oh, you're just looking into it. And she was like, no, the fuck I'm not. You shouldn't say that. So like they got into it and it was all for something very small. And I was like, okay, man, I tolerate the man. I'm just like, I do
Sure.
what you say because you're above me. I just do my job just when everyone else is there, just like normal. The conversations are very limited and it's just like, morning, how are you? There's no crossing that line because it's just not healthy. But yeah, he does treat me and other female correction officers differently. Not necessarily, "Oh, you can't do your job," but it's very like, "Oh, you're basically, I'm just a girl. I can't do the same amount of work that he can," kind of thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which I just proved him wrong because I may have made some mistakes in my job, but I'm pretty sufficient at my job. So,
Yeah.
oh
Yeah,
well.
and it's temporary. There's
Exactly.
that too.
Very true. Very
That's
true.
that's not gonna be maybe if that was gonna be your job for forever, you might
Right.
a different environment or something like that, but
Mhm.
oh, wow. Yeah, that's a lot. That's so much as
Yes.
a 20-year-old that you
Yeah. Yeah, and it just really helps circling back to me being in therapy.
Yes,
Actually, I don't
yeah.
think I actually touched on that. That was our conversation prior to this. I do I've been in therapy for a few years now. I started like late high school, I think like junior or senior year. And my therapist from that time, slightly, not slightly, I don't want to say slightly, she diagnosed me with a general anxiety disorder, which I am not medicated on it. I've found ways to cope with it and I'm still in therapy. Sushi, can you not? Sorry. But it's taken me a while. I still was trying to figure out what kind of person I was going into college. And first year was just rough. That was one of the first times I had an anxiety attack full on. I had basically my entire body just stopped. I couldn't move. I was like
Mhm.
hyperventilating. I was shaking. And it obviously I'm okay and I wasn't in danger or anything, but it was just not fun. I don't recommend. And but I learned from it as I progressed into college and kind of worked myself into it, where I found ways that I can take time for myself and not have to stress about work and school at the same time. Where because a lot of it would just be so much for me that I would just get so burnt out. And then I would struggle to work my way back up. So then either maybe my grades would slip a little bit or my work would be less sufficient. So then I would just be slacking in one way or the other. And it's been that way for kind of most of my life. I'd either struggle in one thing or another, and I just never found a happy medium. But I think since this past 6 months to a year, I've very much grown as a person since still being in therapy a little bit and just being able to talk through some of the stuff that I have to deal with at work, or maybe there's drama in the department that I'm at with school because there's always drama in college, even though it shouldn't, but
There's
whatever.
drama everywhere the
Everywhere.
rest of your life. Don't worry
Yes, I
about
know.
that.
It's great. But so I've really been grateful to have that experience as well because not everyone can maybe afford that type of resource and stuff like that. And I'm grateful that my university actually provides mental
Oh,
health
nice.
resources like that. That's where I go for my therapy. And I didn't like the idea of therapy at the time, just because in the time of my life, I was not the greatest child to my parents. So shout out to them. I'm really sorry. Obviously, we've had this conversation. I've grown a lot, but I was not the best child. So I made some mistakes. I did some dumb things, but um, it helped me grow closer to them too because I felt like I could actually talk with them in a different way than I was before. I wasn't as scared to voice my thoughts and my opinions anymore, which was very useful in our relationships because they built more trust with me, I think, because I was able to communicate with them a little better.
And I think that creates a healthier relationship too, as long as you're not just trying to be a jerk. I
Oh,
think that
yeah.
there's definitely something to be said about being able to voice your concerns, your opinions, and your thoughts. And I know that's something that I sometimes struggle with my own family. Like,
Mhm.
I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I don't like
Yep.
confrontation.
Yep.
And it's been
Me
really
too.
interesting because my husband is also an only child and
Mhm.
he can say anything that he wants. Hello, Sushi. If anybody's watching the video of this, her cat just popped up behind her. But he can say pretty much anything to his parents. He's very open, he's very honest, and then they have a constructive conversation about it.
Mhm.
And I've never really been able to do that because I feel like I'm getting better at it as I get older, but I think it does create a healthier, stronger relationship when you can safely voice your opinion and then just have a conversation about it.
Yeah, and it was a process for me because for some reason I am also a very people-pleasing person, so I never wanted to upset anyone or say something wrong. So I was like I almost was like at this point in this time of my life where I was like, I just wanted to tell my parents what they wanted to hear
Mhm.
and sometimes not what they needed to, which is just me communicating in a normal way instead of just, I don't know, hiding things that I didn't want them to know or just not voicing what I was feeling at the time because I didn't want them to be upset. I was
Mhm.
honestly just scared of the word no. And I
Mm.
never really figured out why until I got into therapy and kind of just hashed that out. And
It's
now,
rejection, right?
yeah. Mhm.
That's a
Yeah.
fear of rejection. And I very much still struggle with that. Very
Mhm.
much. I'm afraid to, I struggle with this in many aspects of my life, but to say what I'm thinking or ask for something because I'm so afraid of the rejection. And I am working through like, why? What's the worst why? If the worst thing they
Exactly.
can say is no,
Exactly.
well,
My
what's
parents
the
said
big
that
deal?
forever. They were like, the worst we can say is no, or just maybe not today, or maybe not this time. And exactly like, I was like, what am I afraid of? I don't understand. I didn't understand why, but I eventually grew out of it. So there's certain parts of me that I'm still like, oh, I really want to please this person, or I really want them to like me. It's still always going to be
I
there.
think it's a
But
forever battle for sure. You may
yeah.
get better at it, but I think it's certain situations you're still going to deal with
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, and also around this time, my confidence level was so bad, like, I had 0 confidence, and it just took me a long time to get there, and I think the past couple years have helped me grow into that. I'm confident in myself, I'm confident in my body, in my own skin, my career choice, like, basically no one can tell me what I can and can't do because either if they do, I'm gonna tell them to leave me alone, or it's just gonna push me to do what I actually wanna do, what they're telling me not to.
I
So,
love
I
that
think
at 20 years old, man. I know I keep saying it, but I wish I had that knowledge at 20. I am just now learning that stuff in my 30s.
Yeah,
So,
and it was such a process. I did not
yeah.
think I was gonna be where I was today because there were, many moments in my life growing up with my parents, they were worried for me, like, they did not know if I was gonna make it through college, which I didn't blame them, like, they were just nervous for me, they worried about their child and, like, being able to succeed and be able to live on her own, and especially in the, like, economy and the society that we're in right now, it's a process, and I didn't know if I was gonna be able to make it or not because college is a weird place to figure yourself out and just live on your own without any parental authority or anything
And
like
you're
that.
still so young, right? I think that's so
Mhm,
interesting too about the society we're living in and the college, the whole thing with college and university, which I think is also changing the
mhm,
mindset around that. Because before it was like, that's what you do. You graduate high
mhm.
school, you go to college, you get a job that's like a corporate job with
Yep,
benefits and all the things. And then you get married
yep,
and you have babies, and there's this whole process, right?
yep,
And
and now it's different.
yeah, it's definitely changing because college is so expensive and
Tell me about it.
it's just not for everyone. Like I did not
Mhm,
go to college. I went to beauty school during my senior year of high
mhm,
school, and I like it was so funny when I first started doing hair. I don't know if I've shared this on this podcast yet, but I would have people because I was so young because I graduated high school in May of that year, and then I graduated beauty school in July, and then I started working full time at a hair salon in like September. And
mhm.
I would have people that I'm literally cutting their hair be like, "So you didn't want to go to college?" Because I was like 18, 19 years old. And I'm like, I'm literally cutting your hair right now. Like, what?
You're like, "You should watch what you say."
Oh, so you
There's
want 8 inches off your hair today? Like, I don't get that anymore. I think it was very much because of my age at the time. But it is so interesting to me that we expect our 18, 19, even 17 sometimes year olds to know exactly what they want to do and who they want to be the rest of their lives. And then we send them,
Mhm.
my husband calls universities adult summer camps because of all the amenities and all the money you're spending and all the things.
Literally.
And he has a college degree. He went to Colorado State University, so like he did it all. But I don't think I would have made it in a university at that age. I would now, but at
Mhm,
that age, I had zero. I didn't even do that great in high school. Like I
mhm.
had zero desire to do the work, to learn the things. I
Yep,
wanted a social life. That was me in
yep.
school.
Yeah, me too. I agree.
So I think if my parents had tried to send me to a university at 18 years old, I think I would have failed and wasted their money and my time and everyone's time. And I don't know. I don't see anything wrong. I like the European gap year idea. I think that's a great idea to at least
Mhm,
get you a little bit older and some life experience before you jump
mhm.
into making a plan for the rest of your life. And as you
Right.
experienced, it changed for you
Yeah,
too.
exactly. Even during that time when I had announced to my parents that I wanted to change my major, one, they already saw it coming because my parents know everything about me, and before I even tell them, they're like, "Oh, this happened." I'm like, "How did you know that?" So, shout out to them because they still shock me with that every day. Anyways, but, like, they were like, "Yeah, we saw that coming." And I was like, "Oh, okay, so you're not mad about it?" And they're like, "You're gonna do what you're gonna do, and if you're happy, that's all that matters." I was scared to tell them because I thought I was wasting their money or whatever, and I was just and my parents aren't able to really provide that much money to my college anyway, so I'm also trying to contribute to it as well. Because FAFSA is a whole thing and where it's, "Oh, your parents can afford this much money." No, they can't. That's basically, like, how they survive, and
It
it
was
just
That's a really interesting thing to me too, because we were somewhere and we were talking to this guy. It might have been actually here where he was visiting with his daughter a college. And it's funny because I don't have the money in the bank to pay for this college. However, he was more middle class. So I'm not destitute. So they won't give me the help that I
Right.
like. Your middle class there totally get screwed in that regard
Yeah,
because they
it's
can't
so
afford
bad.
it because it's so ridiculous. But then you have to be like living on the streets to get help a lot of the
Yeah.
times from that.
And it's because my first year, I was very lucky and privileged to get, like, a grant of almost 8 grand, which
Wow.
was great because I was taking a shit ton of credits at the time. Because music majors, I think the minimum amount is, like, 18 credits for just 1 semester, and that's a lot of money. So then after that year and then I switched, like, my grant level went down and, like, I have student loans already. I'm gonna be in debt for a long time, but which
Mhm.
most of us are, I think, anyway. But, like, when it goes off of your tax bracket, which I'm not exactly sure. I think we are middle-ish class now. I think sometimes we were like lower because I remember even before COVID, we were on food stamps for a while. We did go to food pantries and stuff, which is not a bad thing. I was very grateful that we had those resources
Yeah,
and
for
that
sure. And you're
um
not just living off of them still. You used it when you
no,
needed
yeah,
it and then
exactly.
you moved
Yeah,
on.
and I
Mhm.
think they're very beneficial. I don't like the stereotype of, "Oh, you're just using the government's money because you're lazy and whatever." No, my parents so at the time, I don't know if you know this, but, other people might not either, but my mom was basically working full time even before she had me. She was working while she was pregnant, which
Mhm.
Nah, not the healthiest way to do, but shout out to her. And then even after, I think she only took a little bit of time off and then she went back to she was doing hair at the time. So she was working and my dad was the one who stayed home with me for 18 years. My dad used to run restaurants for a really long time and before they had me, so they just decided together that hey, my mom's going to be working and making the income and my dad's going to stay home and take care of me and watch me and make sure I'm okay. And it was just a weird family dynamic that not everyone understood, which not their business anyway, but so even at that point we were only had a one family income, which is
Yeah.
not it's not easy to do. And when my mom is working hours and hours of work and then having to do it again and again, and when you know how it is when you have cancellations or no shows and you're basically losing out on that money to provide for your family, that can be really
Yeah.
frustrating. And growing up I didn't understand what that was like and I gave her a hard time for it, so apologies for
Mm.
that. But now I have a slight understanding of what it's like and it's not okay. And even in any I feel like any career that you're self-employed or just when I was working at Perkins, some days were good, some days were not. And depending on how good the service was that day, not on my end, but if we were really busy, the wait was really long, and then people would get all fussy and just all that stuff. So then it would deteriorate my income a little bit because I
Yeah.
was trying to do my job, but they weren't satisfied at the time. It's just crazy that we just stereotype everything and just, I don't know, judge people for
Mhm.
income.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't get
I
it.
do think there
So
are people out there that overuse the system. And I think that part of the problem with that is not regulating it enough. I think there's not
Right.
enough people to regulate those programs. Otherwise,
Mhm,
I think that they are helpful to the people,
mhm.
and that's what they're meant to be, is right, as a
Yeah.
temporary solution to get you through a tough time.
Mhm.
And then you are supposedly going to provide for
Get
yourself.
back on your feet. Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think that's part of the stigma is there are the people out there that are ruining it for everyone else. And
Mhm.
so I'm sorry that you had to experience that, but
Yeah.
I'm glad that your mom is one of the hardest working people I know. That was never going to be a thing for forever for you guys.
Right, exactly. And there's nothing wrong with that. Man, when COVID hit and then a little bit after that, I think it was like the year after it hit, it was when I went to college. I didn't realize this until my parents told me, but I had food stamp money. They all sent it. It was like the reimbursement thing, like, it was like the $1,400 stimulus check or something, and then I guess for some reason, because I was over the age of 18, I got, like, an EBT card, basically, and it had $400 on it, and I was like, "Damn, this is, like, helping me eat."
For
Like,
a
I could
college
save it.
student, that's
Yeah.
huge.
I was
Yeah.
so thankful for that because I was like, "Oh my god," like, I was only making at the time, granted, it's enough to survive here, $12 an hour for my work study, but I could only get 20 hours a week at most, and working part-time during the school year and doing classes, I could only make a certain amount of money, and some of that was going to save for a new car when I got to the jail, which I'm very thankful I was able to get one, and that was, like, my biggest big girl purchase, but like, having a little help here and there is totally okay, and I was very grateful for that, and it helped me a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Like I said, there's too many people, unfortunately, who take advantage of it. And I used to work with a girl who took full advantage of all of those, oops, sorry, of all of those programs on purpose, like not, I'm like, you don't need these. You don't.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
It
anyways, like I've seen it, it is out there, but doesn't make it right. And
Mhm.
they are helpful for the people who need them in those
Yep.
moments. So it's just,
Yep.
you just can't rely on them. I
No.
wouldn't want to
Yeah.
rely on any money from the government.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
exactly.
you should be relying on yourself. Like you
Yeah.
should be,
Be
but
self-sufficient. Be an
like,
adult.
yeah, be a good contributing member to society. So,
Yes, we need that.
all right, my dear. I think we should probably wrap this up a little bit. So, what
Yes.
final parting words do you have? I don't know, for anybody out there who's maybe experiencing some discrimination
Mhm.
or people telling them they can't do anything or whatever you want to say.
Don't listen to them. Just do what you wanna do. It's gonna be a work in progress. Maybe something that you're wanting to do right now, just try it out. If it doesn't work, it's no skin off your nose. Trust me, I know how it goes because I'm in it right now. Whether you're my age, 20, almost 21 years old, or maybe a little bit older, mid-20s, 30s, just do what you wanna do. Don't listen to the stereotypes, don't listen to the negativity of other people's opinions because at the end of the day, you are your own person. You are what makes your own decisions. And as long as you're happy, that's all that matters. Just do what you want to do because you only live once.
YOLO.
So, yeah.
It's so true. Just live your best life. That's all I want
Mhm.
for everyone. We're all going to have our struggles. We're all going to get knocked down at some point in
Mhm.
life. I don't believe that people don't get knocked down at some point. So,
Yeah.
but you're very wise for your years and I admire you so much. So, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for coming on and having this conversation. I think it was
Yeah.
very informative and very interesting. And we touched on a lot of different things, which was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.